name is Mary Kate Hunter. I am the government contracts librarian. Been doing this for a number of years, so if you have any questions, please stop me. I'm going to do this as a basic overview. Now, a lot of you are going to know some of this material because you have a background in contracting, so bear with me. What I'm going to do, though, when I show you those resources is I'm going to show you how to get to them easily and what I would recommend you do to find them. So I'm going to try to show you everything that you have access to at the GW Law Library that normally you wouldn't have access to otherwise. So really leaning into our subscription databases. Like I said, I'm probably not going to get to see the chat panel much since I'm going to be trying to go off of a presentation, but mostly live tonight so you can see how I click through the databases. So just unmute yourself and chat it out. This is pretty informal. All right. And if I'm not sharing my screen, please someone yell at me because I don't get to teach as much, obviously, as the professor. So tell me if you're not seeing what I'm trying to show you. Stop me. All right, so I'm going to start by, and you can take yourselves off camera. I don't really care. Doesn't matter if you want to eat tonight. Do what you need to do. I know it's a long week. All right, so here we go. I am going to share. I think I'm just going to share my whole screen so then you guys can see stuff as I go. All right, so you should see a really glorious PowerPoint presentation. So what we're going to overview is just the US legal system. The only reason why I'm doing that briefly is to show you each of the components and where you're going to find them in the databases. And then the biggest portion that I want to show you tonight is primary and secondary sources. And if you don't recall what those are, I will go through those in detail so you can see what I'm talking about. So as you remember, there are four main sources of law. We have constitutions, which we're not dealing with tonight. We have statutes, court opinions, and admin regulations are our biggies. Government contracts research is really interesting because it covers all aspects and heavy on the admin. So we're going to do a deep dive into the admin resources specifically. So when we look at the three branches of government, remember all that fun stuff we learned? We have the legislative that creates the statutes, the executive that makes the rules, and the judicial that interprets the rules created by the executive and legislative branches. And the only reason why we need to think about that is because those branches make up our primary sources or the law itself. So that's going to be our laws, regs, decisions, orders, things of that nature. Then we have our secondary sources. Now, secondary sources are generally what we're going to start with. We're not going to do that tonight, but if you were writing a research paper, which you most likely are because you all have probably signed up for one of those paper courses, or you have to write a thesis, what you should be leaning on in the beginning when you start your research are secondary sources or commentaries on the law. So what did Professor Schooner say about that? What did Professor Yukin say about that? It's not the law itself, it's someone talking about it, explaining it, or trying to make a way to make the law better. The things we're going to look for that are secondary sources: law review articles, books, reports, things of that nature. So something written by authorities in the field. Now, why do we do that? Because they already did the research, so they're already doing part of the work for you. What you do when you find those secondary sources is you find out what those individuals cited. Use the research that they've already done, and you are going to stand on top of that research, build on it, and create your own idea or own argument about what you think should be changed in the world of government contracting. So you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from what other people have already written in the field, because we need to build on their literature. Because you want something unique so you can be published. So obviously secondary sources are the way to go, and they save time. So how do you save more time? My suggestion is to start with research guides. So those are going to be Librarian curated sites that bring together materials, whether they're databases, their government websites, their NGOs. They bring it all together in one place. They've already vetted it, and then you can just click through the materials. It's also going to contain those materials that are only available on library websites. So one of the things you might notice is if you start Googling for materials, you might hit a paywall. You might say, pay us $50 to access this article. If anybody ever wants you to pay for something, Tell them to take a hike, let me know, and we'll try to figure it out for where it's coming from. If you search through the library's materials, though, you'll notice a lot of times that you get around that paywall. The reason being is they are going to know if you come through the library's databases that you are a student with us and you should have access to those materials. All right, so let me bounce out and hopefully. All right, someone give me a thumbs up if you can see a library website page. All right, I can see you, Samantha. Give me a thumbs up or something if it looks good. Thanks, Catherine. Okay, so this is the library's website. So you don't have to go through the portal page to do your research. You just need to at least start here so they know that you are associated with the law school. So when I was talking about research guides, those are going to hide down here. And I know it's not very clean. I'm very sorry about kind of where everything is spread out on the website. But what you're going to want to go to is topical research guides. And that's a good place to start. There's a lot, but you don't care about those. You just want to go by subject. And you obviously want, and I scrolled right past it, government procurement. Okay, so there's 5 guides. If you are taking Tiltman's class, anti-corruption. If you are taking a Eucons class, here you go, foreign and international. Grants class comes up too. I made a guide for that. If you're just doing basics or state procurement, that's going to be going to your government contracts guide. So the way that this is organized is you get tabs on the left-hand side to bring you to different pages. And you'll notice that all these resources have these cute little icons next to it, like a globe or a house. That's going to tell you how you can get access to the materials, whether it's in print with the house. So it's in print here at the library. Globe means it's online, and these little stack of coins or pancakes, like my 1Ls like to call them, that means that they are in a library database. That's how you're going to get to the materials. So before I get too far along there, you're going to notice this is one of the books sometimes the professors recommend, the Government Contracts Reference Book. That's along the lines of your administrative book and your other textbooks. So those are going to be linked out from this page. All right, back to the PowerPoint. So we're going to start with the legislature and talk a little bit about the pieces that we would want to find if we are interested in a law enacted by Congress. So you should be aware that federal statutes are laws enacted by the US Congress. You will see them in 3 potential places. One is slip laws, which they are just random pieces of paper floating around. That's how they first come out before they get put into a set. Then they get compiled together chronologically into bound volumes for each legislative session, and those are the statutes at large. But then how do we find the law? That's way too confusing and way too long to find where everything is located. So what happens is they will pull apart each piece of a law that's contained in the statutes at law by topic and put it in the United States Code. So then we can research the law by topic. That's also how things get updated. So the citations you saw next to that, stat. So if you were citing to a public law, that's the citation you use in the Blue Book. United States Code, that is also the citation used in the Blue Book. So if we go down to sources of law on our research guide, you're going to see that we have a tab for laws. Go down, and this is going to tell you where to go to get those resources, okay? So this makes it a little bit easier for you to find, say, the statutes at large or the United States Code. For our purposes, I am a fan of the United States Code annotated. You can also use the Lexis version, United States Code Service, but because you're government contracts people, I'm going to say go with this one because it is available through Westlaw. And it's not gonna do all my fun. Sorry guys, I have a password manager, so this is gonna just drive me bonkers tonight because it's opening in a different tab. So the guide will bring you directly to the United States Code annotated. If you knew a particular section you were interested in, specifically Title 41 is where our public contract stuff is, you could go right there. A lot of times though, you're going to be researching a topic and not know where to go. You might just know the name of the law. And if that comes to play, there are some really great tools in the United States Code annotated that you can use to help you. So what I like is over here on the right-hand side, it's called the popular name table, because this might happen quite a bit to you. So anytime a law is passed, there's sometimes a popular name, I shouldn't say all the time, but often there is a popular name. So we can try to find one. And I'm going to think of one of the most awful laws that's passed every year. That is right, the National Defense Authorization Act. If any of you have ever dealt with it before, you know it is not a fun place to be. We're going to look at the fiscal year 2018 one. And so what this is going to show us is, if we were looking at the public law, it's going to show us our section numbers, and it's going to show us where it appears in the United States Code when they decided to put it everywhere topically, because they rip it apart out of the public law and put it into the United States Code here. Now, when you look at the United States Code on Westlaw, one of the bonuses is all the content across the top. That's why it's annotated. It's bonus material. So this probably has nothing to do with anything we're interested in, but it's a good example because it gives us all of the information we might be interested in up here. So we can see how many prior versions there were, at least as far as Westlaw goes back, so we could compare versions. I am most a fan of citing references. So if you have a particular code section you're researching, it will give you related cases and related, remember, I love them, secondary sources contained in Westlaw. So these are some really helpful tools that you can use if you're looking at a particular section of the code. And before I get too far ahead of myself, if you're not super comfortable with Westlaw, that's okay. Functions a lot like Lexis, but there are some bells and whistles. If you like researching and you want to keep all your materials in Westlaw in one place, you can create folders. I'll show you later on, we can create alerts. I love doing this for about everything on the planet, because if I'm writing something, I want to know if Congress changed this particular code section. So I put alerts on everything, code sections, the regulations, including the FAR, secondary sources. You also can be cute and you can put little post-it notes in here if you'd like to just find, just make notes for yourself. So you have a lot of options in Westlaw. But like I said, always look across the top and see what that bonus material they give you is. Now, if we scroll down to the bottom of the code section, you'll see this, it's the credits. So always scroll to the bottom because it's going to tell you when that section was amended. And you can see it was introduced, because this is a terrible example because certain things happened with this title. So normally you'd see a lot of string cites here for public laws, but that's how you would look back at what happened to this code section. I know that's clear as mud, but if you run across it, let me know and we can chat about it further if this is something you want to dive into. All right, so. So we looked at our codes. That's great. Codes are going to get you so far. When we're looking at a law, though, oftentimes we're going to want to look at the legislative history. So what was the intent of Congress? So we can look at what happened and what was in the public law. We can look and see what's in the code, but maybe it's clear as mud, as some of these things I'm describing tonight are. Well, what you might want to do is see what Congress's original intent was when they were trying to pass the law itself. So what does the statute mean? So we can look at the pieces that made up the eventual passage of the law. So that would be bills, hearings, committee reports, debates. And when I'm doing something like this, I like to start with committee reports because they usually tell you what is reported out of committee and it's sent to the whole House. So it gives you a little bit more of an overview. The next place I might go after reports, are the hearings. And debates, I usually am a little later in my research because that's usually just what people are screaming at on the floor of Congress. So that is usually a little later on in my research if I get there. So let me show you, not that. So if we're going to our sources of law again, at the bottom is going to be our legislative histories. Now, if something became a law, it's going to appear in this ProQuest Legislative Insight. If something progressed to a certain point but never became a law because Congress shut it down, we can look for materials in ProQuest Congressional. But for tonight's purposes, I'm going to show you ProQuest Legislative Insight because it's such a huge time saver. We got to select us. So you can search this multiple ways. If you have a citation for the public law, that's great. If you only have the popular name, oftentimes that'll work just fine too. So we are going to do the National Defense Authorization Act of, we're just going to write 2018 because I don't know what the full thing is, and hopefully we get what we want. All right, John McCain was 2019, and here is the one we want. You can see we're getting the blue bar telling me it's a legislative history. And we get 20 bajillion things because the NDAA is huge. So what we get at the top is going to be our law. See if I can bring that up. Now, everything we have in here is going to be a PDF. Full text searchable PDF, and that is not what I wanted. Let's try again. There we go. So this is what I wanted. So as we can see, we're looking at this, and I can tell that this is a slip law because I do not see the statutes at large citations at the top. It does take some time for that to happen, but this is going to be our law that we can look at and look at all our wonderful sections. As you scroll down, you're going to see all the related bills. They're all accessible, and then you will get to the reports and other things. Everything is a PDF. But this is a kind of a hot mess and a lot of stuff to look through. So what you want to do is if you need to search in here, you can find full text terms in the publications. So if I was looking for things dealing with commercial or commercial items, and it's got to be a very simple search, just either a word or a phrase. If there's something in that document, it'll put an orange box around it and you'll know, oh, I really should look at that. That might have a word that I'm looking for. So you can see it did end up going through the process. There's something in here dealing with commercial. So that is that database, and that is a 100% time saver than the way things used to be, which is lovely. Let's look at a few other things. Now, a lot more of your time is going to be spent looking at executive or agency materials. So they are going to apply the applicable statutes that we just looked at to create detailed rules. So they are providing the mechanisms to implement the law. So how do we see these? We find these by the Federal Register, which is published daily. It's just a chronological list of the regulations. So you'll see a couple different things in the Federal Register. You'll see proposed, interim, final rules. It might not have an interim, it might not have a final, you might see them in different iterations, but that's generally how things roll. Those are the things that you will see for the various rules. Once again, that's horrible to find things on topic. So what happens is once things make their way through and they become final, they get pulled apart and organized by topic into the Code of Federal Regulations. So those are arranged by subject. And then there is an authority note attached to those that indicate what the statutory authority those regulations are issued under, going back to the USC again. So it kind of does all interconnect when you think about it. Now, the FAR, which you guys are probably already hearing tons about or already know tons about, is a set of regulations found in Title 48 of the CFR that controls and provides rules for government contracting. And as you know, they're divided into subchapters, parts, subparts, yada, yada, yada. So remember that the FAR is part of the CFR. You're not going to cite it that way, but that's where it's located. So if we go back to our research guide, right at the top is regs. So the first spot we're going to go is acquisition.gov because it's super official. And if you come to this page, you can browse the FAR and you can download your section. So we can download this. Don't save it. It changes so frequently that if you download that and use that all year, the material that you're using could be extremely out of date. So we don't want that to happen to you. So my recommendation for acquisition.gov is if you're just looking at something quickly, just use it and throw it away. If you're using something for a paper, pull it up on Westlaw so you can track it. That happened to a student that was working on a journal, well, she was writing a journal article. This was a number of years ago. And the part she was working on got completely amended between her writing it and her getting published. And it was kind of nightmare potential because she didn't realize it till she came to me for help pulling, her CFR sites. So please don't do that. Make sure that you're on top of that and set your alerts. So we can pull it from Westlaw, which is wonderful. And as you can see, I'm only in chapter 1, so I'm in the FAR. So here we can do our search across chapter 1. We can search using our terms and connectors from Westlaw. If you're not certain about your terms and connectors, you can go to search tips and advance to be able to run that better. And then don't forget, I'm linking to chapter 1, but don't forget all the FAR supplements. So that is going to include your DFARs in chapter 2, chapter 13, Department of Commerce, and so on and so forth. And don't forget, the numbers build upon each other. So if I'm looking at 1.301 for the FAR, know that corresponding to that, if I'm looking in, what's a good one? We'll go to 10, 12. It's going to correspond. So it's just putting a 12 on the front. And that makes me know that it's Department of Transportation, 12.01.1, purpose, authority, and issuance. If you look back, it corresponds, the numbering. So if you see those extra numbers tacked on, you know you're dealing with a FAR supplement. I hope that made sense. Sometimes that's clear as mud as well, but that's where the numbering's coming in. It actually does layer upon itself. So it does make sense when you're looking at it in a more comprehensive way. All right, I'm not going to run over this that much, but remember there are administrative decisions that we deal with in government contracting. You're going to hear the professors talk about this so much. Comptroller General decisions and Board of Contracts Appeals decisions. For my purposes, I would also recommend just doing this on Westlaw. It's just an easier way to do it, and it's easier to maintain, organize, and search because you're searching full text publications. People try to find them other ways through the GAO website, but since you have access to these awesome databases, I vote use them. In addition to cases, if you're doing case law research, you can run it in Westlaw and also set an alert. So there's no reason to go to another database to do that. Now I do have something at the bottom that's supposed to remind me to take y'all to Bloomberg Law. Because, you know, even though I'm talking about a lot of resources here today, I want to make sure I'm mainly harping on Westlaw, I know, but it's just the nature of the beast in terms of government contracts research. Sorry, I memorized my Westlaw password, but not my Bloomberg Law. So I don't use it as much for government contracts research, but some of you may. So if you are familiar with PACER, public access to court electronic records, you have to pay for those filings generally. But as you are a student here at GW Law, you have other options. So one of them is going to be Bloomberg Law to get those materials. There's a link right on the front page to get you to those dockets. You can drill down, and if you have the docket number, you can insert the docket number. They will pull documents from Pacer that are not available on the system yet. As long as they don't have to send a runner to court, they will get it for you and pull it into their system so you can view it. So if you're working on something very current that's still going through the court system, or you're looking at a case that's already ended, but you want to see the filings, this is a way that you can dig a little deeper for your research. And I just want to make sure you know what's there, because I always get that question. The most important part, and the one I left for last, which you normally start with first, is secondary sources. But I wanted to get all the primary sources out of the way first, just so you know the ways I would recommend you look at them, which is basically Westlaw. If you're a Lexis fan, you might want to start getting more comfortable with Westlaw, at least for your secondary sources. If you want to stick with Lexis for primary sources, by all means, go for it. So our common secondary sources are going to be law review articles, books, newspapers, legal newsletters, and current awareness resources. And I'm going to stop with my little overview presentation and just work directly off of the library's website, so we can stay in one spot. And so I don't have to worry about logging in anymore. So we have a tab for secondary sources. I'm trying to make it easy for you guys. The first thing is books. A lot of these are going to be your course books. As I mentioned, admin, formations, here are the links to your books. If you ever have a problem, they should be linked out on your Blackboard pages if you're taking the online classes. If you ever forget it and want to go out of town, if you got the print, which I hope you didn't, you can get them here. There's some other titles too. You'll see a lot of them are available in Westlaw. IP, there's one good title in Lexis. That's not really the place I'm going to tell you to go, though. You can see from a lot of the journals and newsletters, they are available on Westlaw. So what we're going to do is do a broad search through Westlaw. Actually, I think I lied. I think I want to show you one other thing before I get that. Because I was going along the lines of showing you the regulations, and I didn't get to some of the more deeper things. So let me show you one or two other things before I pack it up. I did show you the CFR, but I didn't show you the Federal Register or other things. So here's another page. Let me step back for a moment before we go too far. It's called regulations.gov. So people can make comments on what the government is trying to do with the regulations. So say I'm interested in just stuff dealing with commercial items. And I know that the NDAA from 2018 was dealing with the GSA's initiative for commercial marketplaces. And I know that was in section 846. So I'm just going to run a fast search and see what I get. Now you'll see we're starting to get notices. There's proposed rules, the final rules, and other documentation. So you can drill down to find the documents that you want. This is just a supporting material. Let's see. So all sorts of stuff in here. Here's a proposed rule. Just so you can get an idea of what you're going to see. They're going to give you that. And it's basically going to be what you find in the Federal Register besides people's comments. So you might see people like the ABA comment. The nice thing is they're going to provide you like with document numbers within here. So here's a DFARS case number. That's what they are all going to attach under because they are trying to revise the DFARS. So we could use this number to search in the Federal Register to find all those proposed or final rules attached to this particular case number. So still clear as mud. You'll see how the pieces connect as you go further on. All right, let's go back to those secondary sources to make life come together. So I'm going to say we should look at everything in one search if we possibly can, and that is going to be using Westlaw. This is going to get you a pretty good percentage of your secondary sources, because we are going to be searching not only law review articles, but newsletters as well. So I'm going to search this whole universe of stuff, and I'm going to do an advanced search. The reason being is because I think it gives you a more precise search instead of doing what's considered a natural language search. It's going to help you make that fancier search by telling you to insert these phrases. So this exact phrase, I'm going to want, so let's see if I can spell it right. Government contract. Now, that's all well and good, but I would think I want government contracts, government contracting. So what I'm going to do is I can do a root expander with an exclamation point, because Westlaw tells me that's something I can do. So that's expanding my search. Then what other terms am I going to want? I'm probably going to want another exact phrase, because I think I want to search commercial item. So I'm going to have to bounce out of there because I want to put in and then I know I can put it in quotes. So that's going to be commercial item. And I'm particularly interested in if anything was happening with Amazon. So we're going to try that as our first search. Pretty simple, just a couple ands, and we're keeping these as phrases. Let's see if we get anything. And I really don't know because I didn't test this before. All right, not bad. So 52 hits is not horrible. That's actually not a bad search. And government contracts is a pretty limited area. On the left-hand side, if you want, you can limit by some of these filters like date. If date's an important factor for you, limit by date. Jurisdiction is going to come more into play if you're dealing with case law. So that's a non-issue in this instance. Author, well, we don't know who's writing on this. So we're going to just cruise through here and see if there's anything of interest. So the first one is going to be an article from Public Contract Law Journal. And this is not surprising because they published it in fall 2018, which the National Defense Authorization Act for 2018. So they picked a hot topic to write about. So let's see what they did so we can bounce off of their research and build upon it. So how did we get here? I don't know, because then they looked at the legislative history. So you can see how this all kind of comes around. So we scroll right on down to those footnotes and see what they're citing to. This makes life a lot easier. You can see they're citing to the National Defense Authorization Act. They give you the public law number. They have a Federal Register site for procurement through the commercial e-commerce portal. So something that we were kind of heading in the direction of with our searching. They have a bunch of reports. They are citing to another secondary source called contract management. I'll point you guys in that direction in a little bit. So this gives you a good report, report, Senate report. We talked about the legislative history and how reports were a good place to look. They're citing to a Senate report. Here we're citing to the FAR. So we're getting into our regs here. So these are the kind of things that I would expect to see as I'm looking at someone's paper. Here we've got some cases from the Federal Circuit and the Court of Claims. So they're citing some cases, they're citing to websites, so Amazon websites. So this is a well-researched paper. We're looking at some really good sources where they're using stuff out on the web. They're using the regs, they're using the legislative history, and they're pulling it all together. So I like it. And I know that person's name. So what else are we going to be looking for in here? More Public Contract Law Journal. People are getting into it in other areas besides government contracts. That's why we don't want to limit ourselves. American Law Review, they got into it. The Nash & Sabinic Report, another secondary source I love. And those are some names you guys already should have heard. Professor Schooner loves to shout it from the rooftop. So Professor Nash still writes with the help of Vern Edwards, the Nash & Sabinic Report, and it's their musings on government contracts. So if you're looking for a paper topic or a spark or an idea, the Nash & Sabinic Report is sometimes a good place to look. It won't preempt you, it'll just give you some ideas. So the sad and dangerous state of our acquisition system, I'm not sure how it's sad and dangerous, but I'm sure they were very happy to tell us. And here we have something from briefing papers which can totally preempt you if you're writing on this topic because it is a full text law review type article. So you can see they wrote about it too in December 2020. So that's one of the beautiful things about Westlaw is it's bringing these resources that you normally wouldn't get from any other place into one spot. So then after we run a really good search, which I'm not saying this is, you can then hit the bell to create an alert if any new articles are added as you are working on your papers throughout the semester. Because I know at some point you have to give up with your research to move on to your writing. So that's what I would do with this instance. Lexis is good too, but I'm going to tell you about what else Lexis is good for, and it's not necessarily for their secondary sources. A lot of them are comparable to Westlaw for their law reviews and journals, but for me, Lexis wins in one area, and that is going to be their news and legal news areas. Lexis is much stronger in the news section, so if I was setting up an alert to keep on top of things, I would set it up on both of the platforms because one includes the New York Times and the other does not. One includes the Washington Post and the other does not. But Lexis is generally stronger in news. So I would set up my searches in both the news and legal news. So let's run a fun search. As you can see, we can do our advanced search. It's going to tell you how to do those terms and connectors. This is covering a lot of stuff. I don't know what I'm going to get because I didn't have time to play with this. I might get nothing, but we're going to try. All right, so they got a new UK government contract in 2020. So once again, I did a very broad search. What I would probably do again is go to my timeline and then restrict my date if I know I'm dealing with something within a certain date area. That's what I would do. Oh, wow, more stuff. Okay, so there was a lot going on during the Trump administration. So we could see what's going on there. But it is very strong when it comes to news searching. So lean on Lexis for those news searches. If you've ever used Hun Online, I love it as a database to get materials, but I don't necessarily like searching it for law review articles. Instead, the other areas that I would suggest searching if you're doing any type of government contracts research are these databases. And these are databases that are available through the main campus library, so they're multidisciplinary. I want to make sure that you're able to get access and search easier defense publications, GAO reports, and other things like contract management from the NCMA. So you'll see issues of Journal of Contract Management will be found in these various databases. The trick though is you have to be able to broaden your search terms because these do not search the full text of the articles like Lexis or Westlaw. So we need to be very precise in what we're doing. The issue is sometimes these databases do not like the terminology government contracts. Sometimes they like when you use the terminology public contract. So if you're not getting good searches when you're doing it one way, switch it and use public contracts instead. So we can do that and add a row, and we're going to do, I don't know, we're going to try Amazon again. We're on a roll with Amazon. So you can run that search. This database always throws 1 bajillion results at you for whatever reason. And then when I go here, I always have to limit or add more search terms because there is just so much stuff in here between books, journals, magazines, theses. It's just too much. So I narrow down usually by start to scholarly journals, and then I know I need to be in this range. Usually I only want to look back 10 years unless I'm doing something historical. So you'll see you're going to get it from different journals are going to publish government contracts related topics. And you're also going to get repeats like Public Contract Law Journal. So you'll find various stuff in here that might be of interest. I would definitely recommend running these just to see if there's anything that pops up. Let me get rid of this. Go back here. Same with these others. You might be familiar with these from your undergrad experiences. You'll see this is very similar. This one likes the terminology government contracts, so that's nice. And we can just run our basic search. As you can see, we do not get the overwhelming amount of results as the other one. So I kind of like that. We can run through, and here, as I was talking about, is that magazine contract management. And we just need to go someplace up to pull it. So talking about the transition from government to commercial contracting. So that might be something interesting for us to pull up as we look at things. So those are some of the good resources we have here. And then I would always say go out to the web and just do some really good Google searching. Maybe a Google advanced search to pull up from maybe NGOs, what they have done. Now, a trick I like to show students, if they are not already aware, is something called Google Scholar. Because no matter how well you run through the databases, there's always going to be things that you miss. So I like running things through Google Scholar, but before you start running your searches, you're going to want to go to the hamburger menu. And in there, it's going to have settings. Go to settings, and you're going to click on library links and just start typing in George Washington University and click all the ones for George Washington University. I'll show you why that's important as I run a search. When I run a search, you're going to see stuff that I would not have access to out on the web because it's in a database. It will link out. See how it goes to a database called JSTOR? This one goes to ProQuest. So it will link you out to subscription databases because now it knows that you're a GW student. So you are in here and accessing it through the George Washington University, and you can download it. If you are not accessing it through Google Scholar and only Google, it will block you. So this is a nice way for you to look at other materials and what might be out there. So for my own purposes, when I'm doing a research project, sometimes I'm not really too familiar with the area that I'm researching. I like to start with a Google Scholar search to see what I pull up and see if the keywords I'm using make sense. And then at the end of my research, after I go through all the other databases, after I look at Westlaw and I run through all my materials, I like to do a search in Google Scholar at the end. That just means I'm going to make sure I'm not missing anything. This is sad, but I just opened up the chat. Where there will be hot links document with the most commonly used sites after discussion. This is super helpful. Just do not have each link. Will you make this video available to us? Okay, yes. First, I'll make the video available to you. Sorry, I showed you everybody who asked. Yeah, the video is going to be available. I know this is a lot. I'm very sorry. The links to all the resources are actually going to be off of this research guide. And that's why I've been using it, because it's off of the Jacob Burns Library website. And all of these links are going to be available to you to sign in, since you all have your own unique username and passwords for Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg. So my recommendation is just to lean on the research guides like we talked about before, so you can get to those materials. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's see if there's anything else I wanted to cover. Otherwise, I'm just going to take questions from you guys since we have a couple minutes left of our allotted time. I did not talk about this database, and I really should, because this is the database where those Nash and Sabinic books are, and you're probably already accessing it. It's called Vital Law. I hate that pop-up. It really needs to stop. All right. Now, you're really only going to use government contracts in here, and the thing that I like is the Nash and Sabinic E-Series, which you can search across all of these titles. If you're doing research, maybe there's something in another one of the books that makes sense. Now, you probably already heard some of these books are a little bit dated, but some of the material is still really good. So it might be nice to be able to go in there and find something on point. Now, for my master's students, you might find interesting, did they remove it? Oh, they took it away. Okay, there used to be another section of stuff they had in here and they took it away. So that's really depressing. I'm sorry, but I cannot provide you with that. Most of the other stuff in here, I would not search in this database. I would instead use Westlaw. If you have hyperlinks though in the Nash and Sabinic E-series, go ahead and use those. It's just easier to look at. But most of this other stuff is in Westlaw and it's just an easier, I think, platform to use and you can save your material easier. I don't find VitalLaw is user-friendly. The one tool that some of you might be interested in is the ones over here, the practice tools, and they are FAR Matrix smart charts. So you can play around with these. I don't really use them because it's not in my wheelhouse, but this might be some interest to some of you, and I just wanted to point it out here. So click here for a listing so you can drill down by your provision or clause. I'm probably picking a really bad one, so let me go into socioeconomic programs, blah, blah, blah. And then you can click on your results. If you are used to working with the FAR, you will see you'll get your provision or clause where it's prescribed in the FAR, the applicability, description, reporting requirements, and any amendments, including the facts. So if you've ever used something like this before, you'll understand what this is. But I just wanted to point it out. And now I'm going to just break it down for questions. Do I have a new one? Is there any access after graduation? Well, that's a great question. So you're going to have access still to the library website where you can still search our books, which is our catalog, which I didn't even show you because there's so much in there. But does that mean you get access to the materials in there? No, your access is a little limited unless you are able to come into the law library itself. If you're able to come into the law library itself, there is a Westlaw terminal for alumni. You can access all of these A to Z databases, including VitalLaw that we were talking about. You can access those from the building. But if you are working from home, you're on the limited side. The only thing you're going to have access to from the law school is going to be the Hein Online Law Journal collection. That'll at least get you access to the old Public Contract Law Journal articles. But the one thing I can say is more and more of the resources are being made available freely on the web. So that is one good thing I can tell you, but unfortunately, it's a little bit limited. You also do get some of those generic databases I was showing you from the Gelman Library, the main campus library. When you graduate from the law school, you'll also get access to those. If you're ever curious about that, you can talk to me and I can point those out. But if you're staying in the DC area, if you're distance, it's a little tougher, but if you're in the DC area, you do have access to the library here and you can come in. Any other questions since I talk fast? Like I said, this is being recorded so you can look back at stuff. I'm also happy to make appointments if there's something you're stuck on. You can just shoot me an email too if there's anything you're running across that's a pain. Let me make sure I say this. A lot of you are distance students. Please do not pay for library resources. If you want a book that's in our collection, we will ship it to you. You just have to ship it back. If you want a scan of a chapter that's in the library because we only have it in print, we will scan that chapter for you and send it to you. So please don't discount some of the stuff that we have in print because I know we do have a lot. Reach out to me and I can tell you the best way to go about getting those resources because I don't want you to miss out if you are a distance student. For you all that are on campus, the stacks are right near my office. There's a lot of good stuff in there, especially if you're doing foreign and international procurement, because we try to collect extensively in those areas. Anybody that ends up doing anything on African procurement usually clears the section. So if that's an area of interest, that the shelves there get wiped real fast. So if you are working on something specific, let me know and I can point you to the good resources that are hanging out. I should also mention we have a lot of ebooks. So if you do search the catalog here for some of our procurement resources, a lot of those are going to pop up as ebooks. So you can just download a PDF of the chapter you need. I know that was clear as mud because we covered everything under the sun, but I just want to make sure you know you have a lot of resources here. I don't want you paying for extra articles or things like that because it's ridiculous. So I just want to make sure you realize all the stuff we have. And you guys are quiet and it's late. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to just cut it off. You guys can reach out to me. Like I said, I'm very accessible. And I'm going to go to a baseball game.
Have fun.
Thank you. I think I'm going to get rained on. I hope you all are having good weather wherever you are, and hope to see you around soon. Have a great night.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.